I like Ty's quote, take responsibility 100% of your 2%. I'm gonna write that down. Thank you. Our next speaker, Tim Conyers, has considered the whole notion of our physical and spiritual existence and has come to terms with the fact that no one dies ultimately. Our bodies might, but the who of who we really are continues to live on after physical death. Recently, he has been inspired by many accounts of near-death experiences and has been comforted in many ways and hopes you will as well with his speech entitled, No One Ever Dies. Please help me welcome Toastmaster Tim Conyers.
I don't think about death very often. I just know that I don't want to be there when it happens. My wife asked me where I wanted to be buried. I said, surprise me. Carl writer Bob Hope respectively, by the way. I've been inspired by this book called Imagine Heaven by John Burke. Well, this fellow here is a medical doctor, and he interviewed 2,500 people all across cultures, all across religions, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, you name it, different parts of the world. And many experiences were similar. I'd like to talk about a few that were common in most of the experiences when they left this earth. You know, I talk about traveling a lot. You know, you've probably heard some of my speeches about going here and going there and experiencing all these wonderful things on a budget, what have you. But the place we're going to go at some point is going to have free travel and free expenses and free rent. And it'll be amazing. And we're going to love it. Just listen to some of these. First of all, the actual leaving of the body. I know that you've probably heard a lot of these stories. Floating up. And again, this was common in most. Floating up and looking down and seeing the scene below. And there were details that happened in these experiences that could only have been verified by having a bird's eye view that no one else had, or that it was impossible for them to see or have when the time that they were gone. The term is near-death experiences, but really they had a death experience, legally dead. I mean, one example was floating up and seeing a tennis shoe on a ledge outside of a window on several stories up at a hospital, which people didn't know it was there. And then they went and verified it. Sure enough, it was there. So this notion of floating up and seeing what's going on, and then eventually after floating up, it begins to be a rapid movement, and most experience going through a tunnel, a black tunnel of some sort, and it becomes faster and faster and faster. One particular account talked about being in really outer space and seeing things whizzing by at a rapid pace, and all of that occurred for a brief period of time, till such time they encountered a bright light and a sense of love like they had never experienced here on earth. A pure love, an unconditional love. And that struck me that they would experience that so quickly. Now, there were accounts of people that said that they encountered Jesus. You know, they would actually say that, and maybe that was because of perhaps part of their religious teaching or experience, maybe. All of them acknowledged that there was this supreme being that they came in contact with. They would see sometimes loved ones that had gone on before. And then here's one interesting part of what many experienced. It was called a life review. And so they would see details of their life, their whole life, on like a video screen. And it wasn't just part of the life, it was the whole life. Now, can you imagine, especially if you're later in years and you see a video of your whole life? And interesting enough, it wasn't great accomplishments that they saw that were pointed out. It was, how did they love and how did they give? And sometimes it would show times in which they did not love or give very well, and some not so good things that they had done in their lives. But it wasn't a chiding necessarily of what they experienced or how they lived. It was just that this is your life so far. Now, of course, all these people came back, and the trajectory of their lives changed dramatically, as you can imagine, when they saw what was there and realized what was important there. Some actually saw a humongously big, is that a word, city of sorts that was all effervescent. It was like it did not have necessarily concrete walls and what have you, but it was immense, and people lived there, and there were places where people were, and they could see vivid colors, for instance, that they saw here on earth, that many would see nature scenes like you see here on earth, but in colors that were beyond this world. It was so incredible. All of them did not want to come back. The ones that did perhaps want to come back was not because they didn't want to be there. It was because there were loved ones behind that they felt needed them. Like, for instance, small children that needed a mother or a dad to bring them up. And that was one of the things that brought them back, or one of the things that they wanted to come back. Amazing experiences that these people had. And one of them noted that all this happened in what appeared to be a long period of time that could have only happened after days and months and years, but yet in Earth time it was only 9 minutes, for instance, or 11 minutes, or however long it was. So I asked a question to you that I've asked of myself. How much of my life am I living for career advancement, financial stability, wealth, perhaps power or acquiring things, enjoying experiences? Well, the fact is that we can't take it with us. Not the money, not the houses, not the cars, not the clothes. Is it possible that many things that we think are so important here are not important in the eternity that awaits us? Somebody calculate 10 trillion times 100 trillion and then multiply that times 100 trillion, and then you just got a second of time in eternity. It's going to last a really long time. Well, perhaps we should think about how it's going to be. So I say imagine heaven. Imagine heaven. And perhaps we can have more of heaven here on earth. That's